Once again, this is Mike Stewart coming to you of Kingdom Gathering, coming to you with a little message. Today's message is entitled Falling into Temptation. Now, before I get into the message, I want to just hope everybody had a great week and hope this week will be good for you as well. By the way, if you have any prayer requests, you can go ahead and put them in the comments and I'll be praying for you. But, anyways, back to this the message Falling into Temptation. Question: how many of you have fallen into temptation before? Yeah, I know we all have. If we've lived, we've been tempted and fallen into temptation. So let's go ahead and just get right to the text and look at this thing for a minute. Hold on a second. Be coming out of James 1, verses 2 through 4, the actual whole chapter. But anyway, and it reads, My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into divers temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. Okay, let's dive into that again really quick here. Very short text, but principally it's 100% on point to what we're talking about here. First of all, book of James. James, I believe this is James, the our brother of Jesus. He's writing to the 12 tribes of Israel, those and most of which were Jews and some were Gentiles. So that would be Jews would be considered kingdom and Gentiles would be considered non-kingdom, or maybe one way to become a kingdom, or whatever you want to say. But anyway, notice that James says, My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into diverse temptations. Now, I know oftentimes we may think, man, that isn't really joyful, because temptations are things we know we shouldn't do, that we want to do, and sometimes often do, but they're temptations. And he said, count it all joy when we do this, right? And he said, knowing this, that the trying of your faith, okay? Now, before I go any further, I want to explain faith to you, because I know there's a lot of secular folks who call faith different things. They'll say faith in anything that they wish or believe, they call faith. No. Bible says in Hebrews 6:11, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Now, that's the immediate context of what faith is, but the whole entire context of the Bible, faith is what God said, having faith in what he said. That's what this faith is we're talking about here. So we're not just talking about wishing something and just calling it faith because you wished it, okay? So anyway, knowing this, that your trying of your faith worketh patience. See, here's the thing. When we fall into these temptations, first of all, we must understand that God doesn't lead us into temptation. He doesn't. All right. And that's further along in the chapter. The temptation comes from our own lusts that we have, our own things that we may want to do. I know, like I said, when we talk about temptation, we first think of man and woman, like maybe a cheating man is tempted to cheat on his wife, or the same for a wife with her husband, or whatever the case may be. But it's way more than that. It could be a lady who knows that she wants to be a godly woman, but she gets a lot of attention when she dresses really seductively. And because it touches her flesh, it's a temptation for her. Okay. It could be somebody who maybe works way too hard, and maybe when the Lord is asking for time with you, but you working really hard, you get a lot of praise because your accomplishments and everything, and it's a temptation for you. Okay. So the thing about these temptations, and what James is trying to point out to us, is that he says the trying of your faith worketh patience, because oftentimes a lot of the things that we push so hard for, that God has called us to do, he's always already made a way for us to obtain these things, and is going to make a way for us to obtain these things. But what he doesn't want these things to do is dominate our entire lives. You know what I mean? So for instance, if I'm somebody who needs a certain amount of attention, and all I can do is keep going to this particular thing to get this attention that I need to just satisfy my fleshly need and desire, he doesn't want that to dominate us. He wants us to be above it. He wants us to be able to press on. So the second part of the text says, but let patience have her perfect work. So whenever we get to the place to where we do not let our flesh dominate us, and when we fall into these temptations and we have patience, sometimes we might have to cry out to the Lord. And I didn't have to do it plenty of times, asking Him for help to give me patience, Father. And when He does that, it says, "But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing." Have you ever seen the person, for instance? I know I used to might see somebody, for instance, who might say, "Okay, this person is hard." Maybe somebody who grew up in the ghetto, used to a certain lifestyle. Okay. Now the only thing that makes one person harder than the next person is the fact that one is willing to go further than the other one. That's the only thing. Okay. So one guy who may be willing to go to death is going to seem harder than this guy who may be like, "Okay, I'm down with it, but I ain't that down with it." Okay. So it's going to make the other guy seem a little stronger. But the thing is he's just willing to lose more. So imagine if we get to the place in God to where our biggest things that we want in our flesh, and we die to our flesh, and that allows us to dominate these things. They can no longer dominate us. We can't be ruled and controlled by the enemy, the world, the flesh, our flesh, in our lives. Okay. So that's what this whole thing is talking about. That's when it says, let faith have its perfect work. And why James is saying, count it all joy. Now, the thing that is great about this is God doesn't leave us hanging. He doesn't leave us hanging. You could go on your own here if you want to, but um, let me read you what it says in chapter 12. I'm sorry, verse 12, same chapter. "Blessed is a man that endureth temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to those that love him." Here's verse 13. "Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man." All right. And we already talked about that. Everybody's tempted out their own flesh. So anyway, it's got to make this quick. We have all fallen into temptation, and it will not stop because we have our own lusts inside that drive these types of temptations. So what I would advise you to do, or you can read James chapter 1. He goes and he said, if you want wisdom, ask of God. He gives it generously. All right, pray and ask the Lord to help you so that you can overcome this temptation. And the more times we come over it or overcome these temptations, and we get to the place where we die to our flesh, then we're able to dominate in those areas. And the enemy can no longer use them to keep us away from what God has for us. Okay? So, hey, everybody be blessed. Y'all have a great week, and I'll see y'all next week. Until then.